Hi and welcome to another TerraTech Worlds stream. I'm Grace, I'm a community manager, and who do I have with me? Do you want to introduce yourselves?
I am Tom, I'm a senior producer.
And I'm John, the lead programmer.
And we're going to talk about multiplayer today, and we also have some questions sent in by our community on Discord, so if you want to submit questions for these streams, then you need to join our Discord. You can put the link in the chat. Can you tell me, first of all, what multiplayer looks like in TerraTech Worlds? Because I know some people have thought it's an MMO, it's not, but what is it?
So yeah, it's very different from TT1. We've built the game from the ground up to kind of create this seamless kind of multiplayer experience. When you load the game, you know, on the menu system, there's no like, I want to play multiplayer or single player. It's I just want to play the game. You join the game, you invite your friends or you don't invite your friends. The game works with, you know, and is balanced for single play as well as multiplayer. But I think you're probably going to have more fun when your friends are playing with you. It's peer-to-peer. Woohoo! No tethering, which
Yes,
I know that people
very excited about that.
People are very excited about. So you can be on one side of the planet, and your friends can be on the other side of the planet. No magical red barriers stopping that from happening. And yeah, the gameplay, we're just trying to find as many chances to promote kind of co-op gameplay as possible. So
Collaboration.
yeah, collaboration and specialization. You know, the way the game designers are focusing in is, you know, I think we've mentioned roles, but
Yes, we want to get more into that.
doubling down on players having specific
Yeah, so just with
areas.
those roles as well, because people have asked, it's not like you load in and you pick like minor class or anything. It's more about how you build your tech or what you kind of need in the moment. Like, what do those roles look like?
Yeah,
for
we're not
people?
straying from the TT1 kind of core kind of tenets of, you know, the blocks you choose and pick and like and are the things that kind of make your tech. As in, I don't go, oh, I want to be a military guy or a miner it's like whatever the box you choose is kind of what your tech will do. Now there are systems in place which won't or will push you away from being able to do everything.
Yes.
Not to say that you can't,
Yeah.
it's just not going to be very optimal.
'Cause some people have asked, like, could I kind of do a little bit of everything? Like, is that possible, or would I kind of run out of space to do that?
They're choices. So
Yeah.
one thing that we were trying to prevent was you could build a tech that does everything, just as well as somebody that's tried to build a tech that does something very specific. So we wanted to encourage people to do specific things with their tech. So it's not to say you can't build a tech that does multiple things.
Might
Just
not
those
be as
multiple
good.
things. Yeah. So if you want to lean in a particular direction with a design, then you can achieve your goals more successfully, I suppose. But you may find that having a multi-use tech is more appropriate to the situation that you're playing in. So
Yeah.
You're going to be less efficient. You know, what's that phrase of, you know, master of none?
jack of all trades.
Yeah, you're going to be, you know, you kind of can do a little bit of everything, but you're not really going to be that good at it. You know, your friend who specialises into mining is just going to tear in and be like, I've cleaned out the whole space. And you'll be like, oh, I've kind of done like one bit of rock and stuff.
Yeah.
So,
Which is kind of normal in a lot of games where if you use light armor, you can still get in a melee battle.
Yeah.
You're just gonna die first.
exactly.
I think the roles, I think they're very much a framework for thinking about how you can build different types. So we always talk about specific roles, like this is a combat tech, or this is a scout tech, or this is a harvesting or a transportation tech. But these are just almost archetypes, and we're hoping that when people start to play the game, they will invent their own, and we didn't want to bound them by what we consider to be this is A, B, C, or D. It's like we're just ensuring that there are different play styles possible, but people can invent.
Yeah, I mean, and we'll have some fun with, you know, the synergies that we've, you know, on blocks. You know, certain blocks will work better together. You might get some special bonuses or discounts if you're using blocks which are, part of a particular specialization. So there'll be some fun kind of building challenges of how I can make use of these fun and cool blocks. So yeah, but we're not going to stop you from being like, you can't.
And I think
do
it
it
develops quite naturally as well. It's not like you go in, it's like, oh, I'm going to be, I mean, you might do, but like I find it more to be like, oh, I need to do this, I'm going to add these, and then I'll be better if I do this. And it kind of just a natural progression as opposed to being like, well, this is my role and I am just doing this.
Yeah, so you're going to have lots of tech snapshots of of text which solve particular problems, which you'll be switching between, rather than some kind of almighty Goliath that is, mortal engineering across the world, absorbing all of the resources and just annihilating everything.
Instead, there'll just be 5 of you doing that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I just said there might be 5 of you. Is that, I just realised, what numbers are we looking at? Like, how many people are playing?
Yeah, currently we've got an eye on 4, but we're really looking into whether we want to increase that number. So we're doing a lot of internal play testing and playing a lot of multiplayer games internally to find what is that right balance of players. You want to have meaningful interactions with your friends, but if there's lots of them, maybe that becomes less meaningful. So yeah, the number 4 isn't really locked down, or 5. We're still finding that right balance of what is the right size of team.
Although it's representative in terms of the type of gameplay we're encouraging, which would be a smallish group of cooperating friends, working their way through the game and taking on the challenges.
Yeah, we kind of see that idea of there's people out killing text, getting blocks, there's people mining and gathering resources, and then people building back at base and dealing with the crafting system and creating blocks and base panels and structures. Maybe even some people exploring and mapping an area. So it's kind of roughly where our kind of main game pillars sit.
So this is from the Discord, because a lot of people have been talking and asking about this. Is there PvP? Is there PvP mode? Friendly fire? Like, what's going on with all of that?
I think we're staying away from like separate modes for things at the moment. There's no, because we're focusing on co-op. There's currently no reasons in game to destroy your friends. Not to say that you couldn't. We're experimenting with having friendly fire on or off, and we want to obviously create a nice experience for you and your friends, and we want to keep griefing and that stuff to a minimum. So yeah, the question on like, there's going to be no like explicit PvP mode. Will you be able to destroy your friends in a friendly fire situation? We don't know yet. We need to play with the game a bit more and come to a good middle ground, I think.
At its core, we're building a PvE experience. In terms of what the technology can do, it's relatively easy to change it around. It's more about what do we want to set out first in terms of gameplay, rather than what can the engine do.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. I think that's worth noting as well, like when we're talking to you guys about this, we're very much still in development, we're figuring these things out, so it's really interesting to hear your feedback, but do keep in mind that when we say things, it's always possible, these things are flexible and can always change. So earlier we mentioned peer-to-peer. What's that? How does that work? Can we talk about that?
Peer-to-peer is a question for me. So essentially a group of players play together. One of them is designated as the server. The other players connect to that, and the server controls the experience, so they can connect, play their game, and then finish playing. It does mean that if the host stops playing, that the other players have to stop playing at that point. So this is a very common way of running a multiplayer game.
So in terms of the server, will all players share the same server, or will all instances be of their own world save files?
Okay, so players playing together on a planet, that is one instance.
Yeah.
So this would be a small group of players playing together on that planet. I think that answers it. So that will be a separate instance per planet and per server.
Yeah. And in terms of the host and the server, can they apply any specific rules, which could either be like custom game or in terms of like kicking and banning people?
So definitely yes for kicking and banning. The rules, yes, but we have to implement those from where we are now.
That's a good question, because we're looking at this stuff right at this moment, doing research on other games. Satisfactory's just come out with a really good way of doing it, which has inspired us. So yes to dedicated servers, and yes to custom games.
Oh, okay then. Would it be possible for 2 players to be on 2 separate planets at the same time? Like if I was on a planet and I wanted to go to the next one, but my friend wanted to stay there.
Wow, this is we're super early on the multiple planets stuff, so I don't think any answer we could give now would be
definitive.
Yeah, I think it's too early. There's always the ambition of what we want to do, but then it kind of needs to be paired with the reality of what we can and technically what we can do.
Yeah, and I think as well it's worth noting for you guys that we're talking about sort of the first version of the game that we want to share.
Yeah.
Obviously, like TerraTech, we've supported it for so long. With TerraTech Worlds, we also want to keep supporting it for a long time. So when we're saying there might be stuff that we're saying we're not doing, that means we're not ruling it out ever.
No.
We're not going to be doing it maybe like in the foreseeable future. So here's another question from the Discord. Will the difficulty scale as more players join?
So yeah, we have a simple implementation of this. So currently as the more players join, I think the health and the DPS of techs and of AI techs will increase. We're playtesting this at the moment. I'm not sure we're currently happy with what we've got, so we want to revisit it and I think make something a bit more comprehensive. We've also got some functionality that allows us to scale the environmental hazards as well if we want to add more or less, depending on how many players that we have in the on the planet as well. So yes to scaling, but no definitive detail on how it's going to work. But we do want a multiplayer session to be challenging, but then also allow players to play on their own in a single player experience and not be like, well, this is impossible. So.
Yeah, I think as well we're saying a lot of maybes here, and the reason we're sharing everything so early, again, as I mentioned, is because we do want community feedback and we want to know what people think. So I think it's really interesting for us to be sharing this process with you all and hearing what you think about everything that we're maybe in on. It's going to be really interesting to hear what people think either way. We said already that there's no tether, so that's great. Is it online co-op only? There's no like local or couch co-op?
As in one screen that people are sitting like split screen. No, we're not currently intending to split screen. I think really you need the whole screen to see what's going on with the building interface. It's quite a detailed game in terms of the trade-offs you're making when you're connecting blocks. We need the real estate, so it's not necessarily
a really
good fit.
Game as well. Like it's visually so beautiful. I would want like the whole screen to be able to see that. How does water work and like water traversal? What's that like?
Okay, I mean, without going into the huge details on it, because I'd need to consult one of my colleagues, essentially there are seas with waves, there are rivers, you can drive your tech into them, and there's a buoyancy system, so you float. This is currently something that we want to build on much more from where we are now. We want to add specific boat blocks to enable you to get more easily through those waters. Currently you can kind of drive through them, but we want to make that gameplay deeper.
Yeah, it's fun. They've exposed the buoyancy variable on blocks so you can make them float or not float. So it's all about, at the moment, configuring a tech in a way that you can kind of just drive, like an amphibious thing, you can kind of drive through the water. But we're going to really build out that area of gameplay into boats and all sorts of different things.
Very exciting for TerraTech players. Water.
Water.
And it looks great as well.
Yeah, it does.
Oh, and the waves, depending on the way that our environment team model the continents, the waves are actually will get bigger or smaller depending on the drop-off. So that's pretty.
Find a good surfing spot.
Yeah, that's pretty clever stuff actually, which we were all kind of like, oh wow, that's.
Yeah.
It looks
That's
really
cool.
nice when you get the river coming down to meet the sea, and the sea's just lapping into the river.
Full seaside base.
Yeah.
and it makes the environment much harder to traverse.
So, because we've said that this is primarily like a multiplayer collaborative experience, does that mean it's better to work with friends, and like what benefits? We kind of touched on that, but like a bit more about what that collaboration looks like.
Yeah, I mean, we're really focusing in on like how, you know, what fun you can have if I've got one type of tech and you've got another type of tech. So an example of something we put in recently, you can mine rocks and focus in on lasering seams. It will break off a bit of that rock for you, which you can pick up with a tractor beam and then place on your friend's transporter tech, and they can then drive it back to their base. And we've got some buildings which will then pick that rock up, and then it will flow and turn into chunks and flow into your crafting setup. So yeah, the kind of the fun of working together to go out mining, and then that transportation gameplay is really good, and we kind of felt that it was a really good like example of the type of gameplay we're focusing on. And then we've got other bits and pieces. It's actually been in the game for a while. I don't know why we focused on this bit so early, but we've got a building which has this big global map of the whole planet, and we have a shared map system, so all your friends can go out and map certain bits, and then when they get back to this building, their data is uploaded and you'll have a portion of the map revealed. So you can have somebody back at their base looking at this big global map, directing your friends around the planet, and then when they come back with that exploration data, it all kind of gets filled in for everybody, which is another nice kind of co-op feature.
Yeah, I love that, because it's really frustrating in games, because I like to go and explore, and then you come back and you're like, I have no idea if I found something cool, how to get you there, or how to tell you without me having to lead you. So I think the shared map's really good.
Yeah, it's good fun.
That. So last question, again from the Discord. Will money and blocks be shared between players in co-op like in TerraTech, or will they be separate for each player in TerraTech Worlds?
Sure. Yeah, we're super early on this stuff. There will be currency, whether that's a shared kind of global wallet between all the players or your own individual wallets. I think we're leaning more towards there being your own wallet. Blocks, on the other hand, are definitely more communal, as in I can give John a block, he can give me a block. But in terms of your kind of permanent collection of blocks, we're looking at a way of turning a block into a recipe, and the recipes are the things that you keep between planets. So I can start a planet with loads of recipes, but I don't necessarily have access to those blocks until I've got to the bits in the planet where I can harvest those materials or kill those techs or get those things which allow me to then build those blocks.
Okay.
So I think that gives it gives players the chance to specialise down a particular direction, because they can obtain certain recipes which support their play style. So there's a difference between players' profiles that carry between planets.
Right. So I guess just to sum up what we've said, it's primarily a multiplayer experience. You can play single player, but you probably want to be playing with friends. Combat roles aren't designated. They're kind of something that you're going to naturally kind of grow into and maybe switch between. And ultimately, we want it to be collaborative, and we want you to have fun playing with up to 4, maybe more of your friends.
4 or more.
4 or more. But not big scale MMO,
50,
checking everyone
100,
in, not on for
yeah.
that, yeah.
No.
Cool, okay. Thank you for watching, and hope you all enjoy.